Josh Allen is the 2024 NFL MVP. What? I'm a bit perplexed here because how does he get it over Lamar Jackson when the same voters elected Lamar Jackson the first team All-Pro? Now, I've said in my commentaries throughout the season, or I should say the tail end of the season, when you really have a contrite opinion on who can go and win the MVP, there's no denying, if you were to take most valuable player, the phrase in and of itself, one would say that's Josh Allen, considering what the Bills lost on offense coming into 2024. But if you take a look at it statistically, the reigning MVP played better this year than he did the year he won the award last year, but loses to a man who he statistically played better than. Very confusing. I think this is the third or maybe fourth time that the first team All-Pro doesn't win the MVP. This is a very perplexing situation. Now, if this is the case, and I see people making arguments that, granted, there was a 2 interception discrepancy that was there, but Lamar had more fumbles, the turnovers was a bit close, and I think it wasn't even a matter of fumbles lost, just total fumbles. I think Lamar had 10 to Josh Allen's 8. Allen had 6 picks to Lamar's 4, but Lamar's 4 interceptions on the regular season really should be 1 because 3 of them, 1 goes through another man's hands, 1 was tipped, and then 1 was taken away. The only actual pick that he threw was thrown into the hands of Minkah Fitzpatrick. Outside of that, man had no picks. For all intents and purposes, Lamar Jackson should be the MVP. This is damn near reminiscent to what happened a couple years ago in the NBA where it was clear Nikola Jokic should have won a 3rd consecutive MVP, but they gave it to Joel Embiid because of voter fatigue. How is it that Josh Allen gets this award? I've always been a bit of a conspiracy theorist to where I've said the playoffs take, a role in the selection of MVP when it's an incredibly close race, despite the fact that it's already voted on in the regular season. But I felt this way in 2016 between Aaron Rodgers and Matt Ryan. Whoever won in that NFC championship, the winning quarterback would ultimately be named the MVP. Rodgers lost, Ryan won, and Ryan held up said MVP. I felt the same way this year as well. That divisional matchup between Buffalo and Baltimore, whoever won that game was going to go on to win the MVP, despite the fact that after they had named Jackson as the first team All-Pro, I just looked at it like, all right, he's got it. But Josh Allen goes and wins. If that's the case, and we were to look at things statistically or whatever the case may be, right? Why is it that last year, Dak didn't win over Lamar? Because let's call it what it is. Last year, of the MVP, it was an incredibly weak MVP race. But you can make the same argument for Dak in the realm of value to the team because you take a look at Buffalo, losing Stephon Diggs, losing Gabe Davis. Coming into the season, nobody really had super high hopes for Buffalo. And you saw week in, week out, it was damn near a Herculean effort from Josh Allen, week in, week out, willing the Buffalo Bills to winning. You can say, Baltimore, you saw Lamar Jackson do the same, but you had moments in which the defense had phenomenal, performances. You had moments in which Derrick Henry absolutely took over games and ran through people. Like, granted, he's the very first running back, I think, in NFL history to have 2 1,900-yard seasons, but that's neither here nor there. If that's the case, how many MVPs who have had Hall of Famers on their side rob somebody else from getting the award? Hell, 2003, I guess Peyton Manning take away that MVP. He shouldn't have to share it with Steve McNair. It should just be Steve McNair because Peyton had the benefit of a Marvin Harrison, of a Reggie Wayne, of an Edgerrin James, of a Dallas Clark. We might as well take it away. How many other guys can you sit there and say, hey, this person was the MVP, but we should take it away because they happen to play with another great player? This makes no sense. I'm incredibly confused. I don't even know if Josh Allen truly feels as if he should have won the goddamn award. This got some sort of consolation prize, in my opinion, because we could go season by season throughout history where you can find somebody who is truly the most valuable player for their team, but they don't go on to win the MVP award. 2021, hey, I'll be the first one to say Aaron Rodgers should have messed around and won that doggone award, but call it what it is. Derrick Henry was incredibly valuable, was he not? Derrick Henry was playing out of his mind, was he not? In Tennessee, but he's not the MVP?
Man, that's bullshit.
Might I add, you could look at the following year in 2021 when Rodgers won it for the second consecutive time. You could have gave that award to Tom Brady, but Tom Brady's excuse for not getting it was, well, his team was stacked. He was coming back as a reigning champion. Remember all the critique that they had there? Now that I remember it, Derrick Henry was 2020. I think I said 2021 earlier. So that's 2020 for Derrick Henry. But let's go to the tail end of the 20th century. Brett Favre, Barry Sanders. Barry Sanders by far. If you talk about most valuable to a franchise versus Brett Favre, who was on the tail end of 3 consecutive MVPs, they ended up tying, similar to the same situation with Peyton Manning and Steve McNair in 2003. You could have just gave that MVP to Barry, but he split it with Brett Favre. Go 15 years prior, you had Mark Mosley and Dan Fouts, a kicker, got the MVP over Dan Fouts. Was he valuable to Washington? Absolutely. But Fouts was playing out of his mind in a shortened season, and he didn't get it despite the statistics. What was it in the late 70s? It was one of the Super Bowl years for Pittsburgh. Was it 70, 79? No, it was 78. Terry Bradshaw got the MVP over Earl Campbell. Terry was surrounded by talent, and he still got the award. Earl Campbell was over there in Houston with his dick in his hands and nobody else, running through people, ripping through his doggone jersey. So what is the criteria? If anything, the award should have been given to the two of them. But to give it to Josh over Lamar, when the same voters voted for Lamar to be first team All-Pro, but now all of a sudden, they's changing up the criteria for MVP. So wait a minute. What's the difference between MVP and first team All-Pro? Huh?
Who is responsible for this?
Hell, go to 2009. Peyton won the goddamn award. What about Chris Johnson being valuable for the Tennessee Titans then? You've got situation with wide receivers. 1987, Jerry Rice in 12 games had 22 touchdowns, 1,000 yards on like 50 or 60 some catches. He didn't get the MVP. Instead, it went to motherfucking Elway. But Montana was the first team All-Pro. Same situation of confusion, because the same thing that happened to Lamar this year is the same thing that happened to Montana and what happened to Rice in that very same season. This is incredibly confusing. I have no idea what the voting situation just so happens to be. And furthermore, the fact that you can vote for All-Pro nods, and although everybody didn't mess around and come to the same conclusion that, well, Lamar Jackson's the first team All-Pro, if the majority decided Lamar is the first team All-Pro, how is it now the minority becomes the majority and agrees that it's Josh Allen that's the MVP? The consistency's not there. The original voting isn't conducive to the next pool of voting for MVP. This makes no sense. This is nothing more than voters' fatigue, to where they didn't want to give the award to the same guy consecutive years in a row, and they're finding excuses as to why they gave it to Josh. Because if this is the case, and you say it's a matter of who's the most valuable to their franchise, isn't that just a team award? Every team hands out an MVP trophy to their players, do they not? Well, not all of the players, but whoever's the most valuable on that particular season, they'll have a team MVP and they'll hand it to somebody. But last I checked, MVP of the league is of the league. It's not a matter of who's done the most with less. Because if that's the case, why the fuck didn't Joe Burrow get the goddamn award? Well, he didn't qualify for the playoffs. Let's just see if they got that 7th seed, they were one and done out in the wild card. Would he have gotten the MVP then? Because you could look at everybody across the league. Lamar statistically had the best, season. Josh Allen was incredibly valuable for his franchise. But you saw Joe Burrow and Jamar Chase, because you got to give him his credit as well, will the Bengals to possibly get across into the dance of the postseason. Everybody said if Joe Burrow made it to the playoffs, he'd mess around and be the MVP. So now what the hell is going to be the barometer for determining MVP? I'm so confused here. It's a matter of wins. Is that why Josh Allen got it? One more win than Baltimore? Is that what ultimately, did the voting situation for him? I'm so confused, bro. I legit can't seem to wrap my mind around this decision. And somebody gonna need to explain it to me. Hopefully somebody has a very good explanation in the comment section, because it just seems like everything is contradictory. Because throughout the 2000s, how many times have we seen Drew Brees fall short of an MVP season? But there was no doubt in your mind, he's the motherfucking engine that's willing New Orleans. How many times? Calvin Johnson damn near being the only person on the field for Detroit. Now, granted, Detroit was ass for some time, but he should have got MVP votes. If we talk about most valuable, right? What is the distinction in order to identify? What's the criteria in order to identify who's the MVP? Is it statistics? Is it value? Is it intertwined? Because I'm not understanding how Josh Allen got this over Lamar Jackson. I am legitimately shocked. Somebody gonna have to explain it to me. Y'all let me know what y'all thought about this. And as it pertains to the rest of NFL honors, I think all of the other votes, or I should say the awards, for all intents and purposes, they all got it right. Everybody who had initially predicted to mess around and win them, messed around and won them for all intents and purposes. I think with the exception of Kirby Joseph not winning the Defensive Player of the Year over Patrick Surtain. But I am not complaining about Patrick Surtain winning it, because I also said that it should be a DB who mess around and walk away with that award. And I believe I had Surtain like number 3 or number 2 on the list, something of that nature. But whatever the case may be, I'm glad that he done messed around and won. But somebody gonna need to explain this Josh Allen winning the MVP business, because I think Lamar got robbed.
And now a word from our sponsor.
Super Bowl week is here, ladies and gentlemen. Eagles taking on the Chiefs, and there's no better way to watch this big game than with Underdog. Currently, they have a site-wide no-sweat injury token that's live right now. You can cash in on your Underdog entry or get a bonus credit in return. And for all new customers, you already know how it goes. They're giving you a free pick, and the beautiful thing about this game, you already know who it is. Travis Kelce only needs 1 yard to go and cash in on this free pick. You know they're gonna get him the football. And it's incredibly simple with their pick'ems. All you gotta do is select higher or lower for 2 different players, and you open up the door to win yourself some big money. So what are you waiting for? Join Underdog before the big game by scanning the QR code on the screen right now, or downloading the Underdog app by clicking the link in my description using code Adonis, ADONIS, and you can get up to $1,000 in bonus cash by making your first deposit and using that free pick. That's download the Underdog app by clicking the link in my description or scanning the QR code on the screen. Use promo code Adonis, ADONIS, and let them know I sent you. Nothing but victory awaits.